I'm recording, and I think you want to let him in, Steve.
Yeah. Here we go.
Right.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you're calling in from. I'm your host, Steve Cunningham. We are going to be getting started with this action class with Mike Hoseus in just 1 second. If you don't mind, as we get started here, just posting where you're calling in from so we get a sense of where folks are at in the world as we get rolling. I'm here in San Antonio, Texas. And Mike, where are you today?
I'm in sunny Florida.
Sunny Florida, beautiful. We're all jealous. It's cold here in Texas today. Here is a quick overview of what we're going to be doing here today. We're going to give you a very quick introduction to action class. We're going to then get you into the presentation. What you're all here for is to hear Mike Hoseus tell you all about how to create a culture of high performance and people development. We're going to have you answer some questions. So this is going to be an interactive workshop. You're going to be expected to put in some work here today so that you can leave with a plan. And then we're going to send you off into breakout rooms to actually work through these plans and wrestle these ideas to the ground. And then finally, we're going to end up with a Q&A with Mike at the end where you can get all of your questions answered then. So our goal here today is for you to leave with an action plan designed to overcome an obstacle related to your most important goals. We're going to ask you to start thinking about some questions as we get started here today. So just related to that statement we just made, number one, what goal are you working on right now? What is it that has prompted you to be here today? What obstacles do you think are currently standing in your way? That might be obvious to you right now. It may come up as Mike goes through his presentation. He'll be thinking about that. And then most critically, what are your steps to overcome that obstacle so that you can reach that goal? So start thinking about that as we go through here today. And that is going to help you have the right mindset for this session. A few mindset things before we get into this, just so that we're clear on what we want you to be thinking about. When we say goals, we have this concept that context is greater than content. So we want you to be thinking about what is your goal and put that into the center of your experience here today and not the content. The content is going to be critical for you to come up with your action plan, but the most important thing is your goal. Secondly, when we're talking about obstacles, we want you to think about getting better is greater than looking good. The more honest you are and vulnerable you are in creating or identifying what obstacle you're going to wrestle with, the better you are going to get over this hour, because you're going to get some insights and feedback from other people on the call about those obstacles. So if you walk into that breakout session trying to look good, you're not going to solve a real problem. Third, when you're listening to Mike present here today, we want you to think about not what you can remember, but what you can do. So if you catch yourself writing down concepts and ideas, we want you to pause and start writing down things that you can do. What are you actually going to do with the content that you're hearing here today? And then finally, finishing is greater than starting. It's one thing to come up with a plan. It's another thing to make sure that you execute on it. So whatever plan you come up with here today, we want to make sure that you have a plan to implement it. So you put it in your calendar, put it in whatever to-do list you're using. You may go as far as finding an accountability partner to make sure you actually implement what you are learning here today. So to recap, our goal here today is for you to leave with an action plan designed to overcome an obstacle related to your most important goals. And with that being said, what we're going to do right now is we're going to turn the controls over to Mike. And Mike, thanks so much for being here today. We're excited to hear more about your experience with Toyota and creating a culture of high performance and people development. I'm just going to go ahead and, well, it looks like we got the controls working on our own already. So Mike, over to you, and thanks for being here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. I don't know about you, but Steve has got me excited because I love all the focus on action, and it's a great point, Steve. I appreciate adaptive and focus in hosting the event. And Steve and my son Ben. So I always enjoy being happy to work with him. But mostly thank you to you all for investing an hour of your precious time. I know it's valuable. So our goal would be to make it value add. And again, I always go where Steve went. You know, it's only value added by the actions that you take out of it. So with that theme in mind, let's continue on. Again, Mike Hoseus, I had the good fortune to grow up with Toyota in Kentucky. Way back in 1987, first plant in North America. So they sent an army of trainers to teach us. So I was a supervisor, group leader, we were called at the time, working for 20 people on the plant floor, and I had a coach from Japan in my pocket teaching me the Toyota way of thinking and acting and leadership. We grew from the 1,500 at first plant, first shift, to 8,000 people, largest plant in the world for Toyotas in Kentucky. And I had the good fortune again to grow through that at a manager level, working for about 1,000 people, at executive level, working for 2,000 people, and had a Japanese coach at each of those levels, supervisor, manager, and executive. So very, very fortunate, very, very thankful for that opportunity. And I want to share some of that with you. And again, to give you an insight into that culture, not so that you can have Toyota culture, so that you can have decision making, you can have intention, you can have action on your culture. Peter Drucker, or no, I think it's Edgar Schein's quote. I've got a slide, I think, on him next. So we'll show his levels of culture. He's kind of the culture guru, right? And so I won't read the slide to you. You can see it. You know, it's not what we see or say, it's how we believe and act. So again, Steve's things on actions. It's the behaviors that make the culture. Edgar Schein's other quote that I was thinking about there was, you know, we either as leaders, we either manage culture or it manages us, right? So are we running around as a result of it, or are we intending it and directing it? And that's what I learned at Toyota, that as leaders, that's our role. And that's where the power comes from. Peter Drucker has another quote, you know, with culture eats strategy for breakfast or something like that. And that, you know, as executives, we miss that lever a lot of time. Not that strategy is not important, but culture is more important. And again, that role of leadership to intend your culture to drive the behaviors of your folks. Again, that's what this is saying, to drive the behaviors to get the results that you need in your business. So we look at the lean enterprise from that perspective. Now, a couple key points here on this one, again, for culture. Most, and we've been at this lean thing now for, you know, a few decades, but we still are making a lot of the same mistakes, you know, and down in that lower right-hand triangle, a lot of companies are still in the tool business, right? And implementing the lean tools, and with some success, but the problem is it's short-lived, low-hanging fruit, not sustainable, all that type of stuff, unless we can get it ingrained in the culture, again, from the leadership perspective. And so without leadership, we're not going to have the culture, right? We'll have a culture. We won't have the intended culture of high performance, right? So that's where we then open it up and say, okay, we got to look at this purpose, this true north. Again, the why, how, and what. Then we can marry it to those powerful tools and systems, and then to our people, right? And then again, to the behaviors. And the behaviors we're looking for in our lean culture is problem solving, right? Plan, do, check, act, critical thinking, ideas, improvement, problem solving, whatever we want to call it. Those are the behaviors that we're looking for. So, put it again another way, that we're talking about the role of leadership now, and again, designing this culture, setting the true north, determining the why, the how, and the what should be happening, and then doing plan, do, check, act, right? So then, where are we currently? Where we want to be? Do we have a gap? And if you don't have a gap, right, we always said, the burning platform is, then you need to make a gap, right? You need to get a stretch for your organization so that there is a gap. So your first role as a leader is to make a problem for your organization, so that we can then learn together to close that gap. So that is the role of the leader in that lean culture. Again, make it clear, true north, and then start the plan, do, check, act with your organization. So that's the stair step. Now, I like the other leadership point on the slide, and that's this learning together. So that's this humility as a leader, and being able to say, I don't know. It took me a little time to learn that. I wasn't confident enough to learn that right away. I thought I had to act like I knew something if I was the manager. And the Japanese, again, taught me, it's okay to say, I don't know, because these problems, it's just like COVID, because they always talked about it without talking about it. They're like, there's problems will come. You have no idea when they're coming. You have no idea the challenges. You have to have a capable organization of people knowing how to do plan, do, check, act to deal with anything that comes up. And COVID would be a great example of that, right? Who saw that one coming? So we don't have the answers, but the lean leader has the process to teach his people the plan, do, check, act, again, the behaviors, to then find out the answers, to work through that gap. So that's this learning together and this humility. I've mentioned it a couple of times on the why. Again, this why and this purpose is really powerful to drive behaviors. Again, in the culture, we're working and driving the behaviors and intending those. So what is in it? What's in it for me? I always say on this slide, what's the WIFM for your people? What inspires them to action? And if it's, if we say the purpose of our company is to make money or something, right, or to increase shareholder value, then how inspiring is that to drive action? Now, again, Toyota never apologized for being profitable. They're the most profitable car company on earth. When I was there, they said that's not the purpose, right? So we have to find this purpose that connects to everybody, and that's the long-term mutual prosperity for all stakeholders that they came up with, right? It's got to be a win-win for everybody. We have to create this partnership that we're in this together. So let's tackle those problems, like we said, and we have an incentive to do that. So purpose, very important for you as a leader to get everybody on the same page with that. Now, we want to also separate, because whenever we have this conversation, people talk about, well, we have a purposeful product, we're making a heart valve or something that goes into a patient, and it's like, okay, that's awesome. That's really high purpose. This company's making a widget that goes in the gadget that does not much. Now, again, I'm okay with the exercise that says, no, let's still take it to find out what that gadget does and goes into the widget that does the purposeful work. That's fine. So do the exercise, but I always tell people, and I always tell, the ones with the healthcare, whatever, that yes, make that clear purpose, but keep going. Don't stop there. And for the rest of us that have other things, again, the car at Toyota, it was a car, right? So there's purpose in that for transportation, moving people, safety, but that's not what inspired my action. This long-term mutual prosperity is what inspired my action, right? They said, hey, when we're in this together, if we grow as a company, you grow as an individual, vice versa. If you grow and develop and we grow as a company, then you'll get promoted, you'll keep growing and developing, we'll keep growing. And that's what was my inspiration for my actions. So that's what you want to give to your people. And that's the neat thing about the culture and this leadership. Any organization can provide that, right? Any organization can provide an opportunity for their people to grow and develop, I hope. And that's, again, your action. So more on the partnership, again, but I'm just trying to describe this role of the leaders to you, because without the leaders, this culture is not going to happen as intended. So role of the leader in lean also is to provide stable employment, right? To make sure that we're not jeopardizing anybody's employment. That's a big responsibility, especially when we have a COVID and things like that. But it's also the role of the leader then to make systems where all the employees can be engaged in improvement, right? That's the win-win, that's the partnership. We're not just giving a gift of stable employment. We're creating that because we're creating a culture where all employees are able to make improvements and solve problems, right? So that's a big, big difference there for the role of your employees is their job to do their job. Now, obviously, we have to do our job well and be on time and dependable and have quality work, safe work, etc. But we go beyond that in lean. That's not enough for behaviors. We need behaviors of improvement and problem solving. So that's the culture that we're shooting for. And servant leadership is another, again, an example of this intended culture and mapping out the behaviors and being very clear on that, on what are the behaviors of a culture that we want. So again, the culture can start with this, higher why and how and the values and the principles. And then we need to get to the behaviors. So servant leadership would be a closer down, and then we'd have to define what are the behaviors of servant leadership. That is the standard here, right? So that's that plan, do, check, act. What should be happening? What's actually happening? Is there a gap? A quick example, when I was, again, newly promoted manager, somebody has a problem. What do? I went up and solved the problem for them. And they were happy, by the way. And I was happy, by the way. My trainer wasn't, because it wasn't the intended behavior. So he says, no good, Mike son. And I'm like, why do you mean no good? We took care of the problem. So why was it no good? Because the standard for a Toyota leader is not to give answers, not to give commands, not to give directives. Those aren't the behaviors that are to standard. The standard is for leaders to ask questions, to teach, to coach, to facilitate that person's learning and growth and development of problem solving. So the gap was identified. He coached and taught me, and I repeated it more than once, unfortunately, but I learned eventually those leadership behaviors that met the Toyota way. So that's how the culture gets to be it, right? One person at a time, one behavior at a time. But that's the role of the leader, right? Is to set that up, to define what should be happening, and then identify gaps, and then drive those gaps away. What happened here? I lost my, there we go. All right, so now, again, connecting back to our culture definition, right? That we say, hey, we've got these principles and values, and then we've got systems, right, that drive the behaviors, and the behaviors we want to drive results, right? So here's so you have to define the results. Now that's the what of the why, how, and what. So what are we trying to accomplish? Again, as a leader, is that clear to your people? So I go to so many Gembas, and I see incomplete scoreboards, or confusing scoreboards, or late, or old, or whatever. Now, and that would be disrespectful by a Toyota definition. So have we defined what we're trying to accomplish, right? For our results that we need for our business to keep growing. And so these are an example of Toyota: safety, quality, productivity, cost, and HRD. We would add HRD in there. And again, we can spend more time on that. I don't have the time. So because leading and lagging indicators, again, we want to get leading indicators on, because that connects the behaviors to the results for safety, quality, productivity, cost, and HRD. So again, we need to define that on the what should be happening. Now we can link the lean tools as they're intended to help us drive the behaviors to get those results. So we don't have time for a poll question, but I'll ask it quickly. It's a poll question that 99% of people get wrong. So I'll set you up to that one initially. So operator standard work. What is the primary purpose of operator standard work? Number 1, quality. Number 2, trainability. Number 3, reducing variation. Number 4, all of the above. Number 5, none of the above. You guys could use the chat room maybe, but and I warned you, it was a trick question. So literally, I've done this poll here with our Zoominars, right? Our webinars here, probably a dozen times in the last 2 or 3 months. usually about a 98% failure rate. So we'll get a few people that will say either quality or trainability or variation, and everybody else except one or two people will say all of the above. And the philosophical correct answer is none of the above. So then I get to make my point there that says, you know, those other things are all benefits of standard work, quality and things. That's awesome. It's not the intention. It's not the intended behaviors that we're trying to drive through standard work. We want those things, like we said before, the behavior we're trying to drive with standard work is improvement to the standard. So the purpose of standard work is improvement. And that's on the top of the slide. And I'll have this up there when I do the poll, but people won't see it. So the purpose of TPS and those tools is to make problems and opportunities for improvement or Kaizen visible and then actionable, right? So that's a very, really key point. So my point there is that, and again, when people are in this process triangle, they're just implementing tools, they're implementing standard work and different things, and they're not implementing improvement systems, right? So standard work is an improvement system. So we should be evaluating it to see if it's getting the improvement that it's intended. If it's not, then we need to change the system, right? So we're trains the way we're training it or understanding it, et cetera. And so very rarely do I go into an organization and I see standard work being used for improvement. So that should be a problem, right, for us. That should be a gap that we're working to then adjust. So I hope we're making sense. I hope I'm making sense on you know, on simple, but not easy. So again, I acknowledge these things aren't easy, but the Japanese taught us very simply, or else we wouldn't have a chance, right, with it. And again, the simplicity of PDCA, not easy, but simple. You know, the 4 PDCA questions they taught us, right? What should be happening? What's actually happening? Do we have a gap? What are we doing to close the gap? Now, when I do Gemba walks, and we're doing them virtually now, right? So we can go up to a scoreboard, we can go up to a huddle board, we can go to a hour by hour chart, we can go to a new model, new product development wall, a Hoshin Conry strategic planning deployment wall, and I'll still ask those same 4 questions. And it's probably about the same amount of time. 98% of the time, those 4 questions won't be answered. And again, our role as leaders is to teach our people to set up those visual controls to answer those 4 questions, right? So again, we have some gap and some opportunity there. So that kind of segues, and I gotta wrap up. I might already be over time. I'm just mistracking time here, so I'm out of standard. I was off by, so we're wrapping up here though. But so again, you know, connecting these to the people, then the people development, and again, we're developing problem solvers, right? And coaches and teachers of problem solvers. So how do we attract those people, select them, onboard them, train them, engage in improvement, et cetera, to get those behaviors and culture going through our organization. Same thing we've already talked about. So we're teaching, well, we're developing this, now get this. So a leader, right, a lean leader, at very least is solving problems, right? At level 2, the lean leader is solving problems and coaching people to solve problems. At level 3, they're solving problems, they're coaching and teaching people to solve problems, and they're developing the systems that will coach and teach people to solve problems. That makes sense. That's what we're shooting for. And that's the problem solving side. So again, at all levels, you know, at Toyota there, the daily problem solving, when I was a supervisor, I was working with my work team on this daily problem solving, couple hours, couple days, plan, do, check, act. As a manager, I'm working on A3s, system level, project level problem solving, couple weeks, couple months. As an executive, I'm working on Hoshin Conry, strategic problems, business problems, couple years. Now we're blending in those, all three levels, but the primary is what I just described. So again, how are those actions happening in your organization now? You can check, right, to see, are those 3 levels of problem solving happening? All right, so I put this in for Mr. Cho, was our first president at Kentucky. When he left, he became president of Toyota Motor Global, and then became board member, then chairman of the board. And that's who our first coach was. So the world's best. So here's his quote, and I love it on development. Toyota has its own unique beliefs, philosophies, and values. Now that sounds like culture, right? That's Edgar Schein's on culture. It's through our work that we pass these important assets on to the next generation. I believe developing the younger generation is the only way for me to make a contribution to the chain of appreciation to my seniors. Now, do you know who his senior was? Tachio Ono, who gets credited with the founding of TPS, the grandfather of TPS, was his senior. So that's the chain that he wants us to keep going, right? And so that, and then that insight, and again, he wants us to be problem solver and then to coach and teach that chain, but he's talking about passing on the culture, right? Is what really we're passing on. And I hope I gave you a little bit of insight into our role as leaders as intending that culture systematically to then we can then pass it on. So a little over time, sorry, but hopefully we can catch back up. Steve will catch us back up.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Mike, thank you so much for that. Every time I listen to you, I pick up something new, and I hope I have some time in the Q&A to ask you a question. What really struck me was the idea around the standard, the purpose of the standard, and I hadn't thought about it that way previously. Usually, you think of a standard as like, well, here's how you must do this work. And the distinction between that and we're just making visible how we do the work so that we can make it better is a huge distinction for me personally. So thank you for that.
Great.
We are going to give you some time right now. We're going to give you, we're going to try to do a couple of minutes of catch up here. So we're going to give you 3 minutes to answer some quick questions. And the purpose of this exercise is to get a conversation started. So we want you to think about 3 things. Number 1, what is your goal? So think back again to why are you here today? What did you want to pick up? What goal are you trying to solve by being here today? Secondly, what's an obstacle that's in your way? And there must be something between where you are and where you want to go, or again, you probably would not be here today. And then finally, just create the beginning of what your action plan might be for overcoming that obstacle to reach that goal. And what we're going to do next is we're going to send you off into a breakout room where you're going to essentially get that out quickly, and then you are going to have a quick dialogue with the other folks on the call so that they can help you think through how you might complete that action plan and get started implementing it once you get back into your role. So take 3 minutes right now, jot down your answers to those questions. It doesn't have to be perfect. We just want to get a conversation started, and we'll be back with some further instructions in a couple of minutes. This is your 1 minute check. We're going to be back in 1 minute with some further instructions. Okay, welcome back. We are now going to move into the portion of this action class where we get you off into these breakout rooms. We're going to take 15 minutes today, and you're going to be most likely in a group of 3. So you're going to have 5 minutes for each person today to have the floor. And what we want you to do in those 5 minutes is number 1. And by the way, we're going to decide who goes first once we get into these breakout rooms. We're just going to go by alphabetical order, by first name. So if your name is closest to the beginning of the alphabet, you are going to go first. What we want you to do is to present your goal, your obstacle, and your plan. This should take you no longer than 60 seconds. So we don't need a lot of backstory. What we want you to do is just get that out, and then the folks in your group will ask you some clarifying questions and share one of 2 things with you. Number 1, when you're sharing, share any experience you have in overcoming that obstacle so that you reached that goal, your personal experience. And then secondly, any resources that you know are available that would help that person overcome that obstacle and reach that goal. So we're not trying to solve the entire issue today. We're trying to just get you and the folks in your breakout room pointed in the right direction, and we've found that we can do that fairly quickly. Mike is going to be bouncing in and out of these rooms, so he'll be there to ask or answer some questions that you might have, and then we're going to bring you back at about 12 minutes to the hour and open up the Q&A then. So with that being said, have a fantastic breakout session, and we'll see you on the other side.
Come on, Peter.
And Peter and Jonathan, I don't know if you can hear me, but you should see on your screen the option to join breakout room. So you can go ahead and click on that. We'll see you inside that room.